Extreme weather is causing havoc across the world, from record-breaking heat waves to drought, storms and even floods. Scientists warn it's the new normal and the consequences are likely to get worse. So how will governments cope? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Sami Zeidan. The world is experiencing more extreme weather. Scientists warn it's likely to get worse thanks to climate change. You see, parts of Western Europe is sweltering as they endure yet another heat wave. Those scorching temperatures and dry conditions fueling wildfires. In Asia, several countries are recovering from devastating storms and floods. And this week, dozens of cities right across the US are expected to set heat records. The death toll is mounting. Homes, transit and other facilities have been damaged, and many countries are already feeling the economic strain. The scientists expect extreme weather to become the norm. What can governments do to prepare? We'll discuss that with our guests. But first, this report from Laura Khan.
For the first time, water-bombing aircraft have been deployed across France's River Seine. In the town of Fontainebleau, dangerous conditions have forced hundreds of people from their homes, while farmers joined firefighters to protect their land. Wildfires are tearing through forests and communities, from Spain to this historic woodland just outside Paris. Smoke is darkening the skies as this part of Western Europe endures its third heatwave this summer after record-breaking temperatures in May and June.
This is home for us. This is a climate event we will never forget.
From above, the scale is stark. French authorities say about 32,000 hectares have burned so far this year. That's the equivalent of roughly 45,000 to 60,000 football pitches. Even North Wales, better known for green hills and waterfalls, is burning. Heat has turned forests and grassland into tinder. In southern Spain, Borde district is dealing with the aftermath of one of the country's worst wildfires in more than 4 decades. And across the Atlantic, western US is also sweltering beneath a heat dome, which traps hot air, causing extreme high temperatures. In Utah, a new temperature record was set while wildfires burned. East Asia is also recovering from back-to-back powerful storms. Typhoon Bavi swept across Taiwan and Japan before slamming into China with winds approaching 150 kilometers an hour. More than 2 million people were evacuated before giant waves, flooding and high winds battered the coastline. It came after Typhoon Maysak, which brought record rainfall, causing floodwaters to engulf communities. In western Myanmar, flooding has affected scores of towns and villages, displacing tens of thousands of people. This year, excess deaths linked to high temperatures around the world are in the thousands, and the cost is mounting. From damaged crops, transport disruption, power shortages, shrinking rivers and soaring freight costs. Scientists say the surprise isn't that extreme weather is happening. They've warned about that for decades. It's the pace and frequency, and that bears the question of whether countries are prepared for what is likely to come next. Laura Khan for Inside Story, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's bring our guests into the show. We have joining us from Orlando, Daniel Gilford, climate scientist at Climate Central. That's an independent group of scientists and communicators who research and report the facts about climate change and how it affects people's lives. In Paris, Alexandre Borde, he's an environmental economist and CEO of Cibola Partners. That's a consulting firm specializing in climate strategy, climate finance and sustainable investment. And in Hong Kong, Benjamin Horton, a Dean of the School of Energy and Environment and Professor of Earth Science at City University, Hong Kong. He He was also awarded the 2026 Axford Medal, the highest honour given to a climate scientist in Asia. Warm welcome to you all. If I could start with Daniel, first of all, just to set the parameters of the discussion, what exactly has surpassed everyone's expectations in terms of the weather patterns? Is it the air temperatures, the sea temperatures, the duration of storms, or just the frequency of all of that?
It's kind of all of it. You know, our planet is running a fever right now. Temperatures are extremely high. We have a large El Nino that is building in the Pacific Ocean, and temperatures around the planet in the oceans and in the atmosphere have been rising dramatically over the last few decades, and now they are really here. Climate change is not a problem of tomorrow. It is a problem of today. Human beings have been releasing carbon pollution into the atmosphere for over a century, and that has increased the temperature of the planet and is really leading to these extreme changes in weather that is not necessarily catching us by surprise, but is really being felt by the communities of people around the world that are experiencing these tragic events. And so this is something that is here today with us. Human-caused climate change is here. So it's critical that we come together as a species and adapt to it.
Benjamin, I've been hearing about extreme weather patterns for forever, it feels like. How did countries, governments, weather agencies, development agencies, planning departments, and so on, how did they not prepare for this and plan this?
Well, with climate change, we've been predicting this for decades, the scientific community. The first IPCC assessment in 1990 projected that if you increase greenhouse gases, your temperatures would rise. If your temperatures rise in the atmosphere and the ocean, you get more extreme events. You'll get more heat waves and droughts. You'll get more flooding and landslides. Your tropical cyclones will become more intense. They will cover a larger area. They will deposit more rainfall. If you increase atmospheric temperatures and ocean temperatures, our ice sheets will melt and sea level will rise. Climate science has predicted this. However, we haven't acted on it. It's been very difficult to communicate this to the public or the private sector to get the action that we need. And now we're left in this desperate situation. We're left in a desperate situation where millions of people in any single day are feeling the climate extremes. The frustrating
Why,
thing for a
Benjamin?
scientist...
Was it that there an element of doubt over whether the pattern would be so severe, or was it just a different prioritizing of policy choices?
Well, I think in some ways that's $1 million question. If I was able to answer what the cause was, someone would have solved it. The problem isn't the science. The problem also isn't the solutions. We know what we have to do. You reduce your greenhouse gases, you invest in renewable energies, you keep Mother Nature secure, we invest in nature-based solutions, you protect your coastline, you protect your urban areas, you protect your agriculture, you protect your food supplies, you protect your water security. The problem has been behavioural change, getting the action from when you know the problem, you know the solution, and getting the action that is required.
All right, just listening to the kind of list that Benjamin put together for us at the end of his answer, Alexandre: protect your coastline, protect your urban centres, protect the agricultural centres. I've got to wonder, can the world still catch up, Alexandre?
Well, what is happening here this year with a significant increase in the impacts, in the economic and financial impacts? Most likely, we don't have the numbers. We'll have the numbers in 1 year's time. We have the number from last year. What we will see is probably a significant increase in the economic impact of what's happening in Europe, in the United States, and all over the world. But for instance, in Europe, you started your the program with the example of France. We are following that. It's not over, this fire nearby Paris. This will have huge economic consequences. What Benjamin said is that it was always easier not to take any action. So the baseline scenario, as we say in economy, is just, do business as usual and against preventing, against investing in adaptation. It's kind of easier to say it will happen later.
How long
we'll
for,
see
though,
later.
Alexander? Does there come a point where doing nothing becomes more expensive than actually putting some resources into this?
We know as economists that in any case, it will cost more if we don't do anything about it. But there is, this attitude, and it's the same. You can compare it to health issues and people smoking, for instance. They know that they will have an impact on their health, but they continue to do this business as usual, continue to smoke. So it's exactly the same behavior. You prefer to be very short-term minded, although you know that the impact in what you think will be the long term will be high. Simply, we are now approaching the moment where we see the consequences. It's extremely heavy, but we know for many years already. It's not a surprise for scientists, and it's not a surprise for economists working into that the numbers are jumping, increasing in terms of consequences.
Right. Daniel, even if the human part, the man-made part of global warming and this trend was ended, Benjamin was talking a moment ago about we know we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Even if carbon emissions just ended, would that reverse all of the extreme weather pattern that we're seeing it, or just prevent it from getting worse?
It would prevent it from getting worse. There are things we could do to reverse this trend on the very long term, but in the short term, what we're going to be dealing with is the climate that we're experiencing today. Even if we ceased all carbon pollution tomorrow, we would still be dealing with the climate we currently have, because it takes time for the atmosphere and ocean system to sort of settle in. We are experiencing
how much
settling
time?
into
What are
this
we
new
looking
norm.
at?
Well, in terms of changing the temperature without something like carbon dioxide removal, we are stuck with the current temperatures we have for the next several thousand years. It's going to take time to reduce those temperatures. So on human timescales, really, we are going to be experiencing the climate we have now for quite a long time indeed. But of course, we can continue to work together to keep it from getting worse. Every amount of carbon emission that we reduce right now, currently today, we are going to be reducing the potential impacts in the future. So it's critical that we act quickly, act decisively, and work together towards a shared future that is less warm and less extreme.
Alexandre, you were talking about some of the things that the world needs to do, but is there a cost that you can put on this? Has anyone done that kind of research? Say, we need to invest X amount over how many years just in order to mitigate the sort of scenario Daniel was just talking about?
Well, you have indeed a cost in terms of adapting, if we look at just this part. Now, as Daniel said, the less we put CO2 in the atmosphere, the better we will be in terms of increased temperature. We don't want to be above 2 degrees Celsius, sorry. That's the Paris Agreement. Now, if you invest in adaptation based on this scenario, that's all a sort of investment that will be designed for a world where you have plus 2 degrees Celsius. Now, imagine that at the end it's 4 degrees Celsius. All your investment will not be sufficient that we will do now. So that's also the real difficulty here, is that we do not know where we go in terms of temperature decrease. And what we see is that all the climatologists were right in the different scenarios that were put in the 1990s, the IPCC, and updated every 5 to 6 years. And usually what we can see now is that they were somehow, because they were blamed if they were too pessimistic. Now, if we as economists have to take decision based on something that is underestimated, it will be a problem, because it will be a waste of money. So that's all the difficulty. If we put some numbers, we have the estimate for Europe, for instance, that last year it was approximately 43 billion euro. But what we anticipate is that by 2050, it will be 640 billion euro of costs. That's with an increase of only 2 degrees Celsius, because all this calculation were done under this hypothesis. If we are going towards 3 or 4 degrees of Celsius of increase of temperature, the number will be even much, much higher. And we are facing this problem. Worldwide, we're talking with this 2+2 degrees Celsius of something of 5.7 to 5.9 trillion USD, this time by 2050.
Alexandre, I got dizzy at 43 billion. I can't even begin to understand what trillions, where that's going to come from. Hold that thought for a minute. What I wanted to ask Benjamin on the point which Alexandre was making there, that we don't really ultimately know where this extreme fluctuating weather pattern is going. What does that mean for development planning? I mean, do we really know ultimately what we need to do? Might we end up in a situation in which coastal communities, agricultural communities just need to be simply relocated, or urban centres entirely redesigned?
It's so much worse than relocation. We do know where we're headed. So when you think about climate change, yes, we've been predicting the relationship between greenhouse gases and temperatures and extreme events. The other area of study is what is our planetary boundary regarding global average temperatures. So for over a decade now, scientists have been identifying the 1.5 degrees C threshold. That's a global average temperature that's 1.5 degrees above the baseline of the pre-industrial. That's just not an arbitrary number. Once you exceed that number, the systems that we rely on for the food that we eat, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and the places that we live stop. It causes the collapse of the Amazon rainforest, the lungs of our planet. It causes the collapse of Greenland and Antarctica, affecting all coastal cities. It causes the collapse of coral reefs, where we rely on for our fish stocks. It causes the collapse of permafrost, which lock in methane. It causes the collapse of ocean circulation that keeps our tropics cool and our polar regions warm. So we know about this threshold, and in 2024, we crossed it. There is something
I don't want to misquote
about
Alexandre, but I thought he was saying we don't ultimately know just how quickly and how high temperatures are going to go. I don't want to misquote Alexandre, but I think that's what I understood from him, right? Is there an element of uncertainty there in the picture when we try to calculate the cost of that, Benjamin?
Well, we have projections on the future. So we know that if we double the amount of greenhouse gases from pre-industrial levels, the temperatures of our planet will go up about 5 degrees C. Our increase in greenhouse gases since the pre-industrial has increased from about this value of 280 parts per million by volume to 420 parts per million by volume. We know as every single ton of carbon that we put in the atmosphere raises temperatures. Currently, since 1880, our temperatures have gone up about 1.5 degrees C. We desperately need to control these temperatures, otherwise our systems collapse. So that's why when Daniel talked about that every single part of carbon that goes in the atmosphere, it's so important that we conserve our environment and reduce our emissions.
A good point to go back to, Daniel. You know, we're judging things based on the current weather patterns, the fluctuating weather patterns. Are they going to stay, even this pattern of fluctuation, is it going to stay the same for the next 10, 20 years in order for us to plan and catch up on, or is it less predictable than that?
So the predictable part of the system is actually how the atmosphere responds to how much greenhouse gases we put into the atmosphere. The unpredictable part of the system is what we will do as human beings, what our choices we will make will be. When we are thinking about the future, the biggest thing that determines our future is us. That's good news because it means we have the opportunity to make a better world for ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and all future generations of human beings. The bad news is it's us. We have to make the decision right now to continue to cut our emissions and prepare our communities for these extreme weather events that we're going to be seeing with increasing frequency as the temperature of the planet rises.
Benjamin, back to you. Do developing countries, do less wealthy countries have the resources to deal with this? I mean, we heard some really scary numbers, scary enough even for developed areas like Europe. I think the first number that Alexandre gave us was 43 billion. What about the poorest countries on the planet?
Well, I mean, that's the cruel thing about climate change, isn't it? It's those that weren't responsible for the problem, the developing nations, that will be hit the hardest. It's those who are young or elderly, those who have pre-existing conditions. They're the most vulnerable people. People who are poor commonly live in hazardous regions that are most prone to these climate extremes. Again, going back to science and policy, we had the Paris Agreement that was signed in 2015. The Paris Agreement said that, one, we would limit our temperatures to 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial. We failed on that, but it isn't a point of no return. We can get our temperatures back below that threshold. The other part of the Paris Agreement was to transfer money from developed nations to developing countries so they could invest in green technology. So quite simply, they wouldn't add to the problem, that we would enable them to achieve their fiscal security, to lift themselves out of being a developing country, to improve their mortality by giving them access to the green technology of renewable energy, wind and solar, geothermal and hydro, give them the technology to repair Mother Nature, restore Mother Nature, so you have more readily available nature-based solutions. I mean, we have been talking about this a long time.
Right.
I was actually on your show this time last year with some very similar questions after we were dealing with a very, very heavy typhoon season. And that's why you get this frustration from us, because we know the problem, we know the solution. We just need people to act, because it's so very, very severe, as we're seeing in this summer of 2026.
And it seems to be getting more and more unpredictably severe every time we do another show about this. Alexandre, what does that entail, not only for the obvious, the heat waves that have taken, I think it's 20,000 lives in Europe in the month of June, but also for disruption in other ways, for global commerce, for disruption of sea routes, floodings of key roads and bridges and so on, and the disruption of supplies of key commodities for the world?
Exactly. So yes, there are lots of it's affecting really the whole economy. And now there is a difference between Europe, for instance, where you can have some numbers because we are insured against this risk, insured by reinsurance company, but also insured by national budget, so-called contingency funds from the government, for instance. And that's an important mechanism in order to better protect us in Europe, for instance, against these heat waves. Right. Now, in developing countries, we do not have that mechanism, and the international solidarity is decreasing, as you know, while it should be increasing. Sami, you know that I'm just back this morning from Malawi, and when you had 3 years ago in 2022 a cyclone there called Freddy, and the impact of that cyclone, we have the numbers, were up to 8% of the GDP. So you can see for some of the countries how heavy this can be just for one extreme event. And that's dramatic, as Benjamin said, and most of the countries are not prepared for that. But the more you go into poorer country, the worse it is. and
more difficult it is for governments to deal with that. I think we've got about
is really worrying.
We've got about 3 minutes left, so I'm going to try and divide it equally. Briefly, Benjamin, on a point, some analysts are saying, for example, the El Nino phenomenon could raise global food commodity prices by over 15%. How realistic is that, and what will that mean?
Well, the problem with El Nino is that the temperatures in the Pacific, which we use to gauge how intense the El Nino, have never been seen before. They are at an all-time high. Added to that, the rate of warming has never been seen before. Therefore, the latest models are increasing in their probabilities that this will be the strongest El Nino that we've ever seen. And that quite simply terrifies me in Southeast Asia, where we will be hit extremely hard by very, very hot temperatures and a significant reduction in rainfall. So we will have drought conditions that will influence the agricultural sector of Southeast Asia. We will have extensive wildfires, which will cause significant air pollution problems. And we will have heat-related mortality from thousands of records being broken in cities every single day. The positive is that we're predicting this, and we have 6 months to prepare our systems and our people to make sure that this hazard does not become a disaster.
All right. I like the on the positive side of things. I like to think of myself as an optimist. Very hard when we're dealing with a subject like this. But Daniel, are there any areas that might actually benefit from the changing weather patterns? Is there any positive note for us to end on? I think we've got about a minute left.
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily, from a climate perspective, a lot of positives to see. But there is one positive, which is that this is an opportunity for us to have conversations. We had the conversation on this panel today, but that is not sufficient. We need to have conversations broadly in our society, in our local communities. Talk to the people that I want to talk to the viewer right now and say, speak to the people around you. Tell them about climate change. Talk about how bad the weather is getting. Talk about what you together can work together to come together and find solutions to the problems we're facing. Reducing our carbon emissions, adapting our communities to face these extreme weather events. You can make a difference right now, but the way you're going to have to do that is by talking with people. We can't be silent on this anymore. The problems are here with us. They're here to stay unless we do something about it.
All right. Talk and find solutions. I like ending on that note. Let's thank our guests, Daniel Gilford, Alexandre Borde, and Benjamin Horton. And thank you too for watching. You can see the show again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, head over to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For now, that's it from me, Sami Zeidan, and the whole team here. Al Jazeera's coverage continues in a moment, so stay with us.